Hello and welcome along to the Clare Champions Sports Chat podcast, coming to you not just in audio form this week but in full high definition as well, and for that we do apologise. For the first camera session we've decided to roll in the big guns. We've got Fergie O'Loughlin 3 hours in makeup. I think we're finally ready at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon as it is. Owen Maloney got the hair specially done and Peter got the implants in as well, and I'm still searching for my own. It's a bank holiday weekend, but it was also the first weekend obviously of the Clare Senior Hurling Championship. Loads to get through in terms of storylines and results as well. We'll start with yourself, Fergie, in terms of, rather than going through game to game, because people can do that in the paper and obviously your own column as well, but if you were to pick out a big storyline from the championship, or what was, when you were looking back at it on Monday, what was the big thing that jumped out, do you think?
I suppose the game between Erode and Kilmaley. I just thought, going on the performance of Kilmaley the week before in the Cup, they were everybody's favourites, not alone to beat Erode but to win the championship, Derek, and won. And they're
hang on a second, this is round one for no bullets flying.
Anyway, this is gone.
But no, look at, there's an awful lot to be admired about their own performance on two fronts. Firstly, I've seen them down through the years in very, very tight games in losing them. I've seen them, in sticky situations where they become individuals and they don't see out games when they're in control of games, and when they don't finish out games, and even when they need to go at games and bring it to another team, they've often fallen a little bit short. But on Saturday it was different. I thought there was a great go about them firstly, and I thought that a master game plan in making sure that they brought Kilmaley down the centre to make sure they made it a physical encounter. And you go back to the venue, and we mentioned the venue in my article last week, and how so important it is going to be to Kilmaley, apart from the weather conditions going to be nice and dry and the ball moving 100 miles an hour. Clarecastle brings an atmosphere, even though people say it's a big pitch, but it brings an atmosphere where you have the hill in the sideline, where now you have a dugout over the far side that's in on top of you. You had that far over sideline was full of supporters, mentors,
just on
players.
We'll come back to the game for a second, but is that something that's, I suppose, ideal for a championship game? There were a couple, now I have to say, on that far sideline, there was a couple of incidents where supporters were getting up close and personal with officials when calls were going one or the other way, and we've always talked about enclosed venues and all that kind of thing. I mean, supporters along the sideline, championship game, when it really comes down to it, if that was knockout, it could get fairly heated, couldn't it?
So it's only a matter of time, Derek, where an incident in Clarecastle, or for the first time 2 years ago we saw where the Mills and Ballyea was brought to Newmarket. First time a championship game was brought down there in quite a while. Reason why? It needed to be a closed in venue, but for some reason the Mills and Newmarket, or the Mills and Ballyea, are put on Newmarket, and there's serious questions to be asked. And Clarecastle, all it takes is one little incident on either sideline, and somebody to step off the hill or somebody to step in from the sideline, and you can push or shove, or somebody trying to go in to break it up, and you have absolute chaos.
I've no problem with the hill, because at least there is that barrier along. But when you literally have patrons sitting beside substitutes and management, as they were on, because I was there, I saw it. I mean, that's not an ideal scenario.
It's not an ideal scenario, and it's something really, I suppose, look at the county board in all their wisdom that they have. We'll have to look at the situation in Clarecastle.
Because you can actually feed the crowd entirely over to the far side and have your passes in operation for going into the field. I mean, it's not that Clarecastle isn't a great venue, of course it is. Great parking if the stewards were there to get the cars out after, but that's another story. We were all rushing for the park for extra time. But I mean, it's ideal other than just keep them off that far sideline.
They've done it before, Derek. They stopped anybody that wasn't involved in there being a mentor or sub going up to the far over side, and you're only accessing to the hillside, and it was marshalled fairly well then. 3 or 4 stewards up along there would solve any incursions. But on Saturday it was a time bomb at times, and it's something, and look at you, there was no scoreboard working.
Yeah, that was
we were having turmoil. 4 or 5 was watching. There's a point and there's 2 points, and they're down a point, they're up a point. County championship game, there's 2 buttons in a remote control. Any dope can use them, and Clarecastle couldn't get somebody to press a button, score for Kilmaley, press a button for Airlock. Small things.
Is that up to the Clarecastle club, or is it up to the Clare GA to have somebody?
I think it's up to the Clarecastle club. They're holding the venue. They were charging €2 for parking. A few pounds to be made for the men's shed and tote, and that's all good in itself. Surely to God then they can put up for the patrons, and let's pay €10 to get in. they can put up a scoreboard. Somebody can use
it's
remote
a
control.
bit of a basic, isn't it?
Basic.
But lads, so just to expand on that, Owen, you were in Cusack Park on Sunday morning for Crushina Wolf Tones county grounds, had hosted a big double header the night before. You had no problem with scoreboard, surely?
No, I didn't, because obviously I was keeping score, it's my job. But we stuck Oscega for Ballier and Clooney Quinn. Now, they did announce it several times before the game, and the score itself was working, but the team names didn't change and there was no clock, so you didn't know how long was gone in the half. So you could see.
That's not good enough.
No, it isn't. It isn't, to be fair. They announced Crusheen on top, Wolf Tones on bottom, and you had the scores working, but you didn't have the team names or the time. So it was kind of half-hearted effort at best to get it going. Like,
I mean, that early on a Sunday morning, trying to work out all that.
Exactly.
Shannon and Crusheen.
It could be hard to work out what shoes to put on what foot.
Exactly. Left and right.
On a bank holiday Sunday morning, can't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So no, it's not good enough now.
Right, let's get back to the on-field action. I suppose that's what we should be focusing on. We were saying there, Éire Kilmeny. To me, I thought, and I mean this is the greatest respect, right? It was the most kind of un-towny-like performance I'd seen for in quite a while. In that there was none of the flair stuff, there was none of the fancied end stuff. It was getting stuck in right even before the game. We saw that bit of Justin went on to kind of set a marker down, like, and I thought that they almost out Kilmeny, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it was, and I was so impressed. Apparently, you're right to set the tone from the off, but their aggression was controlled, and they had one serious game plan, and that was, and we all spoke about it. The three of us were writing about it during the week, about the space and the speed and the pace of the Kilmaley players, what they needed. Like, Éire's game plan was perfect. They absolutely brought it narrow down the centre, and they just tightened up everything. And that'll be an awful worry going forward for John Carmody. If they don't get the space at Cusack Park, they've no real go-to men down the centre forward or full forward. There are big physical men that you say, well, we can't go through the lines now. This team are pushing up on us. This team are crowding the middle third, so we can't go through the lines. We need to go more direct. And every time they went direct against their Oak, they were beaten. So it'll be a worry for Carmody going forward to say, well, who can we get now in the central zones that are ball winners? Who can throw the weight around? If they're the Conor Clancy, Jesus Christ, he'd have revelled in what happened on Saturday inside centre forward, because he mightn't have been catching any ball, but the centre back wouldn't have been catching it, and the feeders off him would have been loving it. So going forward, and it's something that we're highlighting even before Saturday's event of the venue and the way Kilmaley play and all these things. So it will be a little bit of a worry for John Carmody. I don't know where they're still on the high of the Clare Cup, because there didn't seem to be that lacklustre, just the way Éire went at it, I think, wasn't it? Yeah. I thought it was impressive for Éire, and I'm just talking to one before we came on. It's now for Éire, can they put it back to back now? Yeah. Can they really push on from the performance last Saturday? Because if they can, and they can hold that, and maybe up the little hurling at times got a little bit scattered, where their work rate didn't drop, or the intensity didn't drop, but they got a little bit, the balls really started spraying, they were driving in wide. If they can control that, geez, it's like a good team to beat them. Yeah. I think, yeah. And
just talking to David Reedy afterwards, only talking to a few old people coming out of the ground, we kind of got wind of this, that there was some bit of, we'll call it tour in the camp for a couple of weeks. A few lads dropped off the panel because the commitment wasn't given that was needed, and Reedy mentioned, and you can read it in the Champion on Thursday, in his post-match comments, where he said that we're a small committed bunch. He referenced last year, he said there was a lot of things going on, but he said this year now we're committed. And I thought it was just an interesting phrase to use, given what we heard afterwards. So I mean, this is obviously a group that have come together and said, this is us, this is the wagons around now, let's kick on from here.
100%. And I don't know, do you know Matty Shannon? I know Matty for quite a while from Éire, and what you get is what you'll see. And I don't think Matty will take any bull from any of the players. And I thought there was a fair reflection on the team and how Matty used to go at it himself at times, bit erratic at times, he was playing at times, but there was an awful honesty about it. And yeah, if that was happening, which I'd heard the same thing, you could see the honesty was in the group. When they put on the jersey on Saturday, I thought it was honest, it was decent, they were going at it, and they never dropped it, which was the important thing. Kilmaley were always going to come at him in periods of the game, and were able to contain him, stay with him, go in front again. When it was levelled, they went in front again. And I thought Reedy was outstanding. I thought he was outstanding. If there was ever a cause for the next county manager coming in to go down in a bended knee for a player, because he's so dynamic. It's just not about him playing in the middle of the field. It's what he brings around that area. I'd nearly throw all the rules out the window and gone down the bin and need to get a player back. He was brilliant. He was outstanding.
If Jim Gavin can go down his knees to Dermot Connolly, was sitting on a plane to go to Boston, there's no reason why the same thing could happen with David Healy. Peter, you had the joy, I suppose, of kicking off the championship. You were down in Broadford for Cratloe Whitegate, and you went to Shannon for the other game as well. Without getting into the nitty gritty of the game, as we said, the reports are in the paper, but what jumped out at you, or what would people have been talking about leaving both Shannon and Broadford on Saturday?
They would have been talking about Cratloe's inability to defend in the first half. I mean, they conceded 4 goals. Any time Whitegate put the ball into the sky, Cratloe were just couldn't defend. And from what I could see, I think the problem wasn't so much the full back line. There was absolutely no protection at all in front of the full back line. There was too much of a gap between the half back line and the full back line. And what was happening was the ball was breaking inside, and the Whitegate half forwards, Tommy Holland was playing centre forward. He had a great game. The Burks were outstanding as well. They looked very, very good in that first half. But the half forwards were attacking the ball after it went in, like they weren't inside waiting for it. And the Cratloe halfbacks weren't sitting deep enough, and the same I think with the midfield. I think, okay, you look at conceding 4 goals in half an hour's hurling and you think, well, it has to be the full back line, maybe it's the goalkeeper. To my mind, the full back line wasn't faultless, I will say that, but definitely weren't the full issue. But look, at the far end of the field, then first of all, Cratloe lost Sean Collins after 12 minutes, so there were 48 minutes with only 14 players, red card. But some of their shooting was absolutely unbelievable. It was just absolutely top class. Colin McInerney, as you all know, he never looks as if he's really trying, but he can bang the ball over the bar from any angle. Billy Connors from play, I thought he was very impressive from play. Good from frees as well, very good from frees, reliable. Shane Gleeson was, when they were struggling, when there was, every time it seemed that Whitegate were attacking the first half, they were getting something, if not a goal, they were getting a point. Shane Gleeson was one of the few people in the middle from the middle third back who I think was kind of trying to win ball, set up lads. He got 5 points as well, over the hour. So I think Cratloe, I suppose we all know that in terms of their attack, they have a set of forwards that are probably the best set of forwards around. But they definitely have a lot of work to do to get their system right. I'd say more so than their personnel. Now they were without Michael Hawes, Ogie Murphy. I'd say Michael Hawes definitely is an out and out defender. If he's back for the next round, it'll help him tighten up a bit.
Would there be a case for Dermot Ryan to go back into the half back line like he was last year? I thought it was where he played his best hurling last year for Cratloe. He's probably back in that half back line.
They're not short of forwards, like so.
Yeah, well, they have Conor McGrath in the middle of the field as well, and McGrath now had a very good game, worked very, very hard, and particularly in the second half, I think he really upped his game. They're definitely not short of forwards. Dermot Ryan now, he went off injured as well, so hopefully he's all right. I think their backs need to just be a bit more conservative. Sit a small bit deeper. All that space, it's a nightmare for anyone inside the full back line. Like one of Whitegate's best playmakers was Andrew Fahey. He was driving the ball from the puck out right into the full forward line, and the full back line couldn't cope with it. But as I said, the halfbacks were just sitting a bit too deep. Down in Shannon then wasn't a contest at all. I mean, to be honest, it was embarrassing for Tulla. I don't know. They know themselves what they've been doing. Sometimes you can have a load of work done. You can be very well prepared. Maybe they were. It just didn't show. Sometimes it just doesn't happen for a team. Aine Kilnamona played well, but weren't really put under pressure. I'd say they're still not certain where they are, but at least they're into the second round of the championship. Yeah. They have the scope to improve. I think there's areas of their game that they probably can improve on. But Tulla were just above, maybe with a few exceptions now. Paul Lynch at full back, David Meehan midfield tried very hard, but with one or two exceptions, they weren't anywhere near championship pace.
Derek Curry would have been he wouldn't have been the last that the scoreline would have proved, but he would have been big loss to Tulla. You know, he's a big player for them. Was on last year, and he was kind of their real key himself, and David Mack to their survival, and him being out, you know, big loss.
Definitely, but there must be more to Tulla than this.
Yeah.
And I'd say for Tulla over the next between now and their second round game, I don't think it's about hurling at all for them. It's about being honest with themselves. They need, you know, beaten by 14 points. They didn't lay a hand on Aina Kilmona.
It's unlike Tulla, really, isn't it? Do you know, they'd often be beaten in games, maybe by the 6 or 7. But by God, there's a battle in them.
That's exactly that's exactly what I think will disappoint them most. There was no sign of any anger, you know, aggression. Now listen, as everyone knows, there's times you can be very well prepared, and for whatever reason comes to championship day and it just goes very, very flat. Maybe that's what happened, you know.
But I suppose on the other hand, in the next round they've got a Wolf Tones team who will be equally rocked, I'd say, by what happened on Sunday morning when you were there in the driving rain. I mean, 10 minutes is what Wolf Tones played for, and what was it, nearly 95% of their scoring return came there, and just seemed to go off a cliff edge.
Yeah, 2-3 after 13 minutes. They were 7 points up at that stage. Crusheen were still at home in bed. Aaron Shanahan buried a penalty after just 2 minutes. It was a clear penalty. Dahi O'Connell was dragged down into the large square, and then Dahi O'Connell scored a brilliant goal a couple of minutes after. He beat 3 men on his own and buried it. Looked like they were going to spring a surprise. They looked like they Crusheen in serious trouble. Then all of a sudden, about the 15th minute, just completely turned off, and it was just shut down mode. It was like literally they went limp and just took whatever Crusheen gave them and just sat back and just accepted it. It was the strangest thing of all time, because I was expecting a surprise and a really good clash, but the minute Crusheen turned it on, it was a game over, and it was literally Carl Freeman was pucking the ball out and it was coming back to him just as fast. Like it was like backs versus forwards in training. So Crusheen have serious things to answer for, like 2-3 after 13 minutes, and to finish with 2-5. That's very, very bad for senior level. Like, but Crusheen, you have to say, did look impressive. They've brought in a good bit of youth as well from the Crusheen Tubber team that made the under-21 final. Ross Hayes was very impressive. I think he got 1-7 or 1-8. Obviously a lot of that was freeze, but he scored a rocket of a goal from play. Breffney Horner got 2 goals as well in the corner. He was good. He seems to me like a kind of a Shane O'Donnell figure, in the sense that he might be quiet for a lot of the game, and then bang, like he didn't do much at all in the first maybe 35 minutes. I think the 36th minute he scored an absolute rasper of a goal. Seems to be a player that will just pop up when you need him most, type of thing, and get goals. But just the thing about
Castle's half back line and them 2 dangerous men inside, and it just ball after ball after ball after ball rained down, and you know, it was just it was criminal to see 2 of the younger lads left inside, where maybe Patrick Kelly and Bobby Duggan, who were playing centre back, in their wisdom playing him centre back, maybe could have been deployed on maybe 2 of their best forwards to nullify them. You know, again, we just have to talk about matchups and systems, and you know, small little things. Even though Clarecastle probably will never beat the Bridge, or were never going to beat the Bridge, but it would have been a lot closer. The game would have been a lot tighter, and it was about staying in it for as long as they can. They didn't tempt themselves in a lot of ways in the way they set up. And as I said, like again, the Bridge are coming on the back of a little bit of Wexford. In the way Davy played Wexford, it broke down on a number of occasions. Thank God for Clarecastle, that's 16 wide. So again, it's something that we've seen with Davy's other team, where it's shoot on sight at times, and you know. But I think they get better at it. But as for Clarecastle, look at it's worrying times. You know, 9 points from play, even though we had 2 or 3 maybe goal chances that we scuffled a little bit. But again, to go back down to I think survival for Clarecastle. You know, the Bridge will have learned absolutely nothing from their 18-point win against Clarecastle. They won't know exactly where they're at, as the Aina Kilmona situation, Peter, against Tulla. You know, we said it last week in all of our columns that, you know, okay, if you're beaten the weekend just gone, but you had a performance and you've been thereabouts, and you've something small to work on to get you up to the next level, well then being beaten in the first round isn't all so bad. But it's been 2 or 3 teams. Take example, Clarecastle, Tulla and Wolf Tones. Where did it go for next weekend? The only thing that might have Wolf Tones or Tulla lifeline between themselves, that they've drawn themselves against each other. But you know, Clarecastle now were meeting a Cloney Quinn team that were 17 county finalists after being beaten by 8 points by the winners of the 17 county final. Jesus, tonight in training is going to be difficult for them. So it's worrying times. You'd only be hoping that they can again get picked back up to where they were. But as for the Bridge, I think they'll focus in a little bit more on what they're about. I think there was a lot of sideshows in the park on Saturday evening as well. Do you know, it wasn't all about who was out in the field, it was who was in the stands. Do you know, I thought Paddy Meehan, who I'd respect, a very, very high hurling, intelligent man, will know that performance wasn't top class, and even though winning by 18 points. Do you know, so he'd want to resettle that group and get them focused in to what's been happening on the field, because there was an awful lot about the Bridge stuff that you wouldn't like either. Do you know, so look, worrying times for Clarecastle, very worrying times.
Yeah, we got, you mentioned people in the stand, Lee Chin, Paddy Foley, the two O'Connors from Wexford, they were all up. The understanding is they were up the crusade to keep their manager started a little bit earlier this year. I saw Ger Lawler had pictures on social media over the weekend. They were down in Setterites for a bit of a night out as well on Saturday. But Peter, that's an indication, I guess, before we get on to what was the highlight of the weekend in the Fergie derby of Cloney Quinn and Ballyea. But obviously this crusade starting that little bit earlier, so obviously these guys are quite fond of it.
Yeah, I wonder now, have they set the tone, or are they going to come to every Bridge championship game?
Well, the welcome Ronan Keane gave them. Everyone knows Ronan is an avid Bridge supporter. What a man he is along the sideline, but he was in his element anyway, so I'd say the welcome he gave them, they'll be back again for sure.
Well, I tell you, he has been on a Bridge sideline for nearly as long as I can remember. He's there all the time. I suppose, listen, it's probably a weekend away for the Wexford boys, but also with the agenda of trying to make sure that Davy stays with him, you know. So I suppose it's a good sign for him that they're coming up yet again, trying to keep him on board. But yeah, it'd be interesting now to see will a different group of Wexford lads come up in for, is it a rotational system or something? You know?
Yeah, those Reds.
But if you were involved in management, and all how nice it was for them to come up, and if it was to come up, and nobody knows, was it Fitzy's birthday, or were they coming up on a night out, or were they coming up to engage in whatever? I'm not too sure. But if you were involved in the management team, like, I'd be saying, oh no, you know, let's concentrate here.
Too much of a distraction.
Oh, absolutely. And for the first 20 minutes, there was a fair distraction in the Bridge the way they played. I thought they were awful mediocre. And you know, it was 8 points to 6 for a period of time, and Clarecastle were well holding their own. And then the choke came out in Clarecastle. You know, the legs started to go, and I'm just worried about how fit they were as well. And there's one thing you can be guaranteed, is that the Bridge are absolutely flying fit. And the choke came out in Clarecastle, and then it became an easy target then. But if you're involved in one thing, I'd like to think that full focus is on what we're about. There's 6 more days in the week to have communication with whoever else you want, or travelling buses or whatever you want, but not on the day we're playing championship. That'd be my thinking if I was involved. So I think, I want to be careful.
In fairness, they're hardly in the stand in Cusack Park with a big sign saying "Go Davy" though at the same time.
But you're right. Look at Owen. Everybody in the park knew that the Wexford lads. We were walking in, we were told the Wexford crew are in there. I'm sure the Wexford player or the Bridge players knew that, you know.
I'm sure they're playing hurling long enough now. Like, is it like? Are all the county team, inter-county teams going to be looking up at Michael D every game in Crow Park? Like, we should be focused on what's inside the 4 lines and not what's outside.
100% there, but all I'm saying, it carries a distraction that you don't need. And if the Bridge went up after 15 or 20 minutes, 10 points in Clarecastle, I'd say, no effect on them. You know, bring them back again the next day. The fact of the matter is that they were very, very cumbersome. I thought their play was very, very poor. It took them a long time to get into the game, and maybe the reason isn't because them boys are up in the stand, but often at times there can be other distractions. Maybe they weren't mentioned once, the Wexford boys weren't mentioned once inside the dressing room, but I'm sure they all knew what was happening. And I'm only trying to add up the Bridge performance in the first 20-25 minutes and how flat it was and how poor it was. You know, against another team, you know, they have a big draw the next day against Ballyea, and if their first 20-25 minutes is as flat as it was against Clarecastle, they'll be down 10 points. That's the reality of it. Now, look, that's only an opinion. I don't know, maybe there's nothing to do with it whatsoever.
The highlight of the weekend, as we mentioned, the Fergie Derby, Clooney Quinn and Ballyea. What a cracker that was. We thought it was going to be a shootout. Little did we realise P. Duggan 214, 9DC 114, and the inimitable TK at 1-6, including that bullet in extra time. This was a game that started probably a little bit slowly. First half didn't really catch the imagination, but God, once Peter got that first goal, it kicked off, didn't it?
It did, and the first half I thought the game was very, very poor. You know, I thought confusion for Ballyea. I thought the way they placed their team at the start, Paul Flanagan playing midfield, Tony Kelly inside the full forward line, even though given a rove and roll. Gary Brennan for most of the first half didn't know where he was playing. And I thought the direction maybe that they had was to leave the isolation of Niall Deasy and Fergal Lynch. And for the first 20 minutes, none of that materialised, bar one ball. A lot of balls went astray. I thought it was total confusion by Ballyea. And in fairness, somebody inside the dressing room at half time said, hold on, let's go back to what served us right 12 months ago. Let's get our formation of our team right. And you know, from there on in, we had a massive, massive performance. There were 7 points down, remember. And straight from the puck out, what's the one thing you'd be telling the team? Don't let the opposing team, when you get a big score, get a score straight away. See it out for them for 4 or 5 minutes, let the doubt really settle in. Tadhg Lynch on the ball, and a fantastic goal. And he stood up to you know, rather than to take care of the Niall Deasy. But slowly and surely, the formation of the Ballyea team started to come together like it did last year. You know, Kelly come from the middle of the field, Gary Brennan coming on the ball, playing it off the shoulder, Niall Deasy being able to rotate from the full forwards to the centre forward Bert, and Tadhg Lynch coming into his own, Paul Flanagan going back into defence and coming out, Jack Brown starting getting on ball and delivering to those areas, to the Kelly area, to the Gary Brennan area, to the Deasy area where they know they can hurt teams. And slowly but surely Ballyea came into that. I suppose for Clooney Quinn lads, back down to their old reliable Peter again. You know, it was so much about Peter again.
I'm conflicted about this, Fergie, because we talk about that, right, and just looking at the match programme even at home last night, just all these marks all around Peter, right, and the rest of it was pristine, you could nearly frame it. But then I got thinking, well, the man's after hitting 214, so what if you're reliant on him? If you've got a guy like that, why not rely on him? You know, is it that big a deal that he's so dominant in terms of scores?
I used to have this argument when I was out 2 years ago with Clooney Quinn, with the manager, Ger O'Halloran. Or 3 years ago, Ger used to go on about, we're over-reliant on Peter Duggan, but every team in the county, and if you go outside our county, has one real key player that they like to get on the ball more often than others, that their game is probably surrounded around him. And Peter's one, as is Tony Kelly, as is John Conlon. Do you know? So, you know, Conor McGrath go back a few years ago, Colin McInerney now maybe a little bit more. So every team has one of those key players. But what you need of the others, and what Ballyea are providing, Derek, is that the rest of them are chipping in. And if they're not chipping in from play, they're working savage hard. Too many times in that, especially in the latter end of that game, normal time and extra time, you know, the ball came out too handy from the half back line of Ballyea and full back line without any challenge from Clooney Quinn. Their work rate, Ballyea's work rate is savage. And here's a point I was making to Owen. Of the All-Ireland club final team that Ballyea played, there's 6 of those players that weren't playing Saturday evening. Now that's a massive gap to be missing.
In about 3 years.
In 3 years. And they've filled them. With lads that are working savage. And you were talking about the Gudgie, Cathal Doohan, savage losses, Stanley Neen, massive loss, James Murphy, that, you know, most people say isn't spectacular in it, but by God, try and get around him, try and go through him in the half back line, and you learn it. Do you know, Joe Nealon out injured with his hand. You know, so Pedro Connolly that came from Kerry that was able to pick off
the
a few points. Kevin was in goal.
Yeah.
You know, so you have a massive void of players that were missing from 3 years ago, which isn't long ago, as you say, and they were able to fill that and give a performance. What Clooney Quinn will be awful worried about again is that the over-reliance again on Peter and few, but again getting our matchups and staying with our matchups right for too many periods, whether it was fitness or not, and it's an argument that we could have, is that they lost, especially in the latter end of normal time and extra time, they lost Tony too often. He was gone, he was creating space, he was getting on ball with no marker on him, and Niall Deasy stood up for and Niall Deasy's an excellent player.
Yeah.
He stood up really, and I've known Niall since he was 10 years of age and coaching him, and often at times he goes missing in games, often at times when it's really out there to be got at, you'll be saying, come on Niall, we need you now. Saturday evening was his best day.
Yeah.
In all aspects. We know how good of a hurler he is.
I thought it was
Brilliant.
summed up. Remember, and I'll just get your thoughts on this, Peter, for a second, because we don't see it too often. There was that free right at the death, and Fergie Lynch now was nearly as close as I am to Fergie when Niall Deasy was taking the free, and obviously the trajectory was affected because of that. He was trying to kind of get it around Fergal rather than getting it over him as you would in a normal scenario. But in fairness to Fergal Gray, he came in, informed Ger Hoy, play had developed I think over to the far side, and Ger came across to call it back. Now, as much as I suppose we've given out about refs in the past, you kind of have to firstly I suppose applaud the fact that was done, and maybe wish for a little bit more of that.
Definitely.
Because they're small margins. You're talking championship games, and this game was in the melting pot, not just in it, but below at the bottom.
Yeah, 100%. The one thing you want to see from referees is common sense, exactly like that. And I think it's when referees sometimes aren't fit enough to keep up with the play. Sometimes they're making decisions from a long way away, and sometimes don't communicate effectively enough with their linesmen, with their umpires. We've said it here before, like it's, to my mind, it's one of the basics that you communicate as much as you can as a referee with the players. You're not explaining what you're doing, you're just keeping the lines of communication open. You can't explain everything, you'll be there all day. But very importantly as well, that you lean to an extent on your officials that you have, you know, and I mean that was a fairly pivotal moment.
And what I loved about it was that the free was retaken, and a section of the crowd were trying to put Niall off. Now, in fairness, actually, I was watching Dave Barry. Dave was actually turning back to the section that was there and telling him to stop. That, you know, he wanted the sporting element kept up, and you have to applaud him for that. But the puck out came, and Niall caught it in a similar position that he put the free over, and it was almost like he unleashed the 30 or 40 seconds of frustration prior to that. Do you remember that? It was just an absolute, if you could call it, a bowl belt of a ball, you know, and stuck it over. I thought it showed just savage drive.
Yeah, excellent. And you just go back again to the Dees Niall, and you know, he's one that I would have spoke about last year in frustration of how he wasn't getting a goal on the Clare Senior Hurling team.
And his manager brought it up after the game
and
said,
he
said it's an awful pity that in Clare he spent so much time on the sideline.
Yes, he got 5 minutes against Limerick, and it wasn't his best 5 minutes, and he was kind of dropped from there on in. But you have to be a little bit patient with Niall Deasy. We know his qualities, and they are very good. And you know, if anybody looking at the county championship last year would have said he's one man that has to be on the Clare Senior Hurling.
He basically won Balliol the county final last year. He's metronomic from frees. Cratloe kept fouling.
How long have you had that word in your pocket for?
That's quite a word for
We're 40 minutes in.
You're playing as Derek McGrath.
No, I'm definitely.
Could you explain that word to the viewers down? Please break it down.
Right down.
You can set your watch to it. It's exactly what it means.
Right down the camera. Metronomic.
I was trying not to curse, so we can't edit this because it's on video. So let's move in. But just actually, while we're talking about Balliol, a point I wanted to bring up. I was talking to Tim Crowe actually, and they're playing Balliol next. 6 Mile Bridge are playing Balliol in the second round, right? The winner's draw. So he mentioned Cratloe, Ina Kilnamona, Balliol and Kilmaley as the 4 clubs in Clare that he rates are above everyone else at the minute. Now obviously it's probably a bit of playing mind games there, but he said because they're so heavily football influenced that they're the 4 clubs above everyone else, and that everyone else has a bit of catching up to do. What would you think about that?
Is it football influences because they're...
In terms of so many dual players like Cratloe,
exactly. Look, it's not about the style. Look, and as one thing we commented on regularly last year about Cratloe and the way they played. It's hurling played football. Yeah. You know, it's off the shoulder, it's through the lines, it's lateral rather than up the field at times. The problem is that's going to occur, and we've touched on this, is that as the championship goes on, and as the injury count goes up, and as the energy starts to zap, and the freshness you need to come into it, is that, and you must look at Balliol last year. Clonagel went out to the championship early last year. Yeah. It gives them that breathing space to get that energy, to get the likes of Gary Brennan, Killian Brennan, Martin O'Leary, I think Kilmehel were out nice and quick too, to get them hurling, get their touch good, get them in Balliol more often, get the freshness up, get their touch up. Yeah, I agree to a certain extent, but not necessarily as the championship goes on.
Okay, right, but just say Cracklow, Jewel, obviously fairly high profile Jewel club, they get knocked out of the football early, right? So then you still have that same style of hurling played in a football-esque way. How do you counteract that if you're 6 Mile Bridge then? What would you do?
Again,
You
it's
just say 6 Mile Bridge, start playing football.
no. And look at. I think in Kilmaley, some of their lads play football with Milltown, but at times, and we covered Stream One Championship extensively, through live stream, which was actually a brilliant initiative that you brought up, and we watched it closely. We watched the way Kilmaley played. Kilmaley played through the lines, the 21s. They played up through the lines, from the full back to the wing back or to a midfielder coming up. Their half forwards came out if they wanted the ball. If not, then it was that fast, quick ball into Aidan Kennedy inside the corner, or young Ronan that was in the other corner. And that worked brilliantly. So I think hurling has revolved it a lot, because not necessarily because you play football as well, that you don't play that football style. The problem is with these teams that are playing the football style off the shoulder, going short through the lines, is that when you meet a team that goes man for man and pushes up on them, are they able to divert into a second game, to a second plan?
Did we see that with Kilmaley?
We saw with Kilmaley, they were caught short. They were caught short on Saturday evening. That Winnie Road went man for man, went physical on them, stopped them coming from their half back line up the field. They were found out.
And I suppose really one of the hardest things for a manager or a coach to do is to change midstream. You know, if your preferred tactic just isn't working, how do you change it? I mean, you've got to have a plan B. It's easy to say that, but communicating that to the lads on the field then.
I have massive debates with Anthony Daly going to Dublin on this. I think your game, if it's that way, has to change every 10 minutes. You must be able to divert your game from the short game to the long game, from the diagonals to the laterals, from off the shoulder to up the flanks. You have to be able during the game, be able to switch that game. It shouldn't be now we have to revert to plan B because we're in trouble with plan A. I think plan A, plan B, and if you have a C without confusion comes into it, you have to be able to mobilise them throughout the game. So now it doesn't become a caught in a situation. You must be able to mobilise those plans.
So variation within
100%.
your own plan without necessarily changing because plan A isn't going well.
Correct.
But what happens
100%.
if plan A is working wonderfully?
Keep with it.
Yeah. What's really happening here, as in case you didn't know, is that the Shannon Gales are out in the intermediate football championship very shortly. So you're getting tapped for free info here and coaching tips. That's exactly what's happening, and take no other word from O'Connell. Lads, time is catching up with us, and we've only got a couple of minutes left. Peter, just I know, from what we saw over the weekend, I don't think last week we got a word on yourself on who you think are favourites to win the Canon. We'll get that from you, and do you still think that's going to be the case? Obviously, though, you're around your head now, so you can pretend that you knew all along.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, before last weekend, I would have thought Kilmaley will definitely be in there.
Join the club.
I still think they will. You know, I think that sometimes a loss, as long as it's not a knockout loss, you can learn a lot from that. Now, it's a bit of a cliche to say we learn from losing, but you know, do Kilmaley have that capacity? I think they have. You know, I think they have the capacity amongst the players that they've got, amongst the management, to you know, analyse what went wrong. Now, they were only beaten by a point after extra time, so like it wasn't a complete calamity or anything like that. So probably a lot of things went right for them. I mean, they were, was it what, 6 points down at half time?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So they won the second half by 6 points, and they lost extra time by a point. So you know, they'll probably, you don't want to kind of throw everything out either. You know, I think Kilmaley will have a say. I think Cracklow will definitely have a say. No, I know again, and we won't go over all ground again. The whole Jewel thing going to be very hard if they go well in the football, go well in the hurling. That's going to be a huge challenge come quarter-final, semi-final stage. Maybe not so much in the earlier rounds, but their what they have up front is just fantastic, and that gives them a great chance. If they can tighten up a bit defensively, I think work on their defensive strategy, stuff like puck outs, retaining their own puck outs, things like that. Ballier, one of those three are probably going to win it along with the Bridge. That's 4.
It's only
Clonlarry as well.
It's very, I suppose if I had to, I'd
colours to the mast is what I'm looking for.
I'd probably go with Cratloe.
Right. Owen, you went to Kilmaley last week. Are you changing midstream?
He must have splinters in his arse from sitting on the fence. I was actually really impressed with Clonlara, considering they were playing a very, very physical Mills team who weren't that far off Ballier last year. They can't have regressed that much. But with Ian Galvin to come back as well, they could be a team that like last year when you saw them play, you said no way next year, didn't hope. But they have rejuvenated a lot in a year. And now the only thing is Tots will be out. He got a straight red. So he's likely to serve a 2-game ban. So it's a tough assignment against Éire Óg next. But if they get over that without Tots, with Ian Galvin to come back in time as well, they could be a force to be reckoned with. But no, Kilmaley, I'll still stick with them here. Look, they're not out yet, and they have a game against Whitegate that will be a test, no doubt, next. But they should be winning that and will get a bit of steam going in the championship again.
It's going to be interesting to see where that venue for the Whitegate Kilmaley game is.
They'll want Kilmaley will want a white field there. I guarantee you they'll want a white field there.
We know how spirited Whitegate is, in all fairness to them. They're a really spirited outfit coming from a small bunch of guys. Numbers wise, panel wise. It could be difficult, I'm telling you.
They will.
It'll be difficult for Kilmaley. You'd be thinking they'd have too much, but again, the venue, the day.
They'd be looking for Broadford. I'd say if I was them. If I was Whitegate, I'd be.
Would you accept Tulla as a compromise from a Kilmaley perspective?
Broadford or nowhere. If I was Whitegate.
Fergie Cratloe, you're picking the paper.
I'm going to stick with Cratloe. After the weekend, Peter touched on their full back line. Michael Hawes, I don't know, he's to come back into it. Ogie Murphy's to come back into it.
I think they've only minor enough injuries from last
year. That would strengthen up their defence. I'd be very, very worried, even though Peter said you wouldn't leave all the blame on the full back line. 4 goals to come out of that full back line would be worrying to me. I think Dermot Ryan will have to go back into that back line. And I think the use of Conor McGrath, like we saw last year, starting in the middle of the field, give him a breath of fresh air, really, really give him that energy and that space to go about. I still think that they used him smartly last year when they used pop him into the full forward line for that 10 minutes maybe, and he caused trouble inside. I think they'll get better after their first round. And again, going back to the famous, if they do have a serious run in the football, how are the legs going to hold up, how are the freshness going to work, how are they going to work that? And if they can work that, I think they're in serious.
I think we saw it last year though, when they did have a good run in the football, and you saw it then translated into hurling. They fell over the line against Kilmaley. I tell you, another 2 minutes Kilmaley would have beaten them. After building up a nice lead, Kilmaley constantly ed into it. It was just constant pressure. And we saw it in the county final as well. Robert Crack was 7 points up against Ballier at one stage, lost by 6.
And missed 6 scoreable ones, handed a goal to Martin O'Leary.
I think it was nothing but mental fatigue after just a tough year. The amount of dual plays they had, 11 or 12.
Yeah, and we mentioned them against Milltown in the football the week before they played Kilmaley. They were just out on their feet. Milltown ran through them, and that was all mental, physical energy levels were at a rock bottom. So again, that's going to determine, there. But I still think they have the quality. I do think, and they're well balanced, and they want to be fit. If they can keep the freshness and the recovery right, they're in good chance.
You're sticking with Cratloe. I went to Kilmaley. I'm going to stick with Kilmaley for no other reason. I'd rather be ticked than right.
Yeah.
They're very close to as well.
You've achieved the first already anyway, yeah.
Geographically, you're staying with them.
We almost forgot the business of selling papers, lads, as to what I suppose that's the chief purpose of this 50-minute rant that we've gone on in terms of what's coming up. Obviously, a roundup of all the senior and intermediate action. We've also got the senior Camogie Championship starting. We've got a full preview of that. The Clare Senior and Intermediate Football Championships are all starting this weekend as well. We've got our fact files, our opinion pieces, group previews, all that good stuff to look forward to in the paper. And a massive news as well for the Clare Junior Camogie team. They are playing an All-Ireland semi-final in Cusack Park on Saturday at 2 o'clock, and we're going to hear from 2 of the players. It's a unique one in a lot of ways. They're playing together on Saturday in the park, and they're going to turn around and line out for Broadford versus Rowan on Monday evening. So familiarity is put to one side for all that. To my panel of beautiful guests here, we have to get on to Benetti and Patrick Burks, I think, to sort us out and get her clobber for the weeks to come.
We'll thank them on Twitter like Daly does.
Peter's got a load of that Tommy Bogey as well. That's it. Pick up the paper Thursday. We'll see and talk to you again next week.